Welcome to another episode of Coming to Your Senses, where we talk about navigating the labyrinth of the mind and emerging victorious. And today I'm joined by Marcus Hemsley, who is the founder of the Fountain Partnership. And whilst I have we've got kind of many mutual friends that we didn't realize that we've got mutual friends. And then we met on a course this year and have subsequently become friends ourselves. So welcome, Marcus. Thank you so much for joining me today, because I know that you've got a very busy schedule. My first question, coming to your senses, are those moments where life gives us a nudge or a shove or a push or great big kind of slap in the face. And as we have just been discussing before I hit record, there are many, many moments like that happen. But can you share with us one or maybe more moments in your life where you've come to your senses and where and what that's led you to?
Yeah, well, thank you for having me on. It's been fun. Obviously, meeting you a few months ago and the back and forth, and now I get to tell a few stories about how I really messed up and the things I learned. So I was about to swear then. That's why I hesitated. Are we allowed to swear this? Oh yeah. So this feels like this is a 2018, September 2018. I woke up and I'd lost feeling in my arms and legs, and that was terrifying. And I could still move them, but I was twitching. I was like, "What on earth is going on?" So straight away, emergency GP appointment, get past the NHS receptionist because I said, "This is what's happening." And normally GPs are quite calm, aren't they, Jules? They're like, okay. And this guy looked genuinely worried. He's just like, you'd go straight to A&E. I was like, this isn't good. He thought I had some sort of brain swelling. Turned out it wasn't that. I went into an MRI, and basically the neurologist said, "Oh, you've got something called functional neurological disorder." I thought, God, that sounds terrifying. And he said, "No, it's a lot more. It sounds very scary, but actually it's stress related." I was like, "Oh." He's like, "Yeah, you've been pushing it." I was like, "I have." So if we rewind a little bit, I can sort of tell you a bit more about me. So I set up a marketing agency of my other half in 2009, and we grew it to about 51 people at the time. And towards the end of 2017, I had what I call my £500,000 hangover, where another coming to my senses moment, because I gave up alcohol off the back of it, but bit of a clickbaity headline, really. I was very hungover. I was best man at my best friend's wedding, got exceptionally drunk. It was a midweek wedding because he's a school teacher with very little money, bless him. So next day was a working day, and I picked up the phone to one of my guys from the office who said, "Can you check the report going to our biggest client that pays £500,000 a year?" I said, "No, Danny, I'm very sick. I'm hungover. Not going to check it. Just get a triple proofread. I'm sure it'll be fine." And then I get a call from the client a week later saying, "Marcus, you run a data-driven agency, don't you?" I said, "Well, yes, we do, Kate." And she goes, "Well, how the fuck can you say that when the data was all wrong?" And I was like, "Oh, no." And what happened, I don't know if in your line of work, you don't really deal with many spreadsheets, Jules, I don't imagine, but we had put together a number of spreadsheets with lots of nice tables, and they had to be copied and pasted across the report. And whoever copy and pasted them across decided to get all the numbers the wrong way around. Now, my team didn't notice this. Kate, the marketing manager, didn't notice this, but the CFO did. And she's like, "Picture the scene, Marcus. This is my first big report, like presentation to the board." And the CFO said, "Kate, the numbers don't add up." And I just fell apart. And it was the most embarrassing moment of my career. So I've got to let your agency go. And they're paying us £45,000 a month, Jules. So that was a big gap. We had to let 4 people go. And I decided that was it. I was going to break up hard with alcohol, but then went on this mad sort of business development sprint to try and replace it. Worked very hard and some of the other team members did as well. It wasn't all the Marcus Hemsley show, but worked hard 4 to 6 months, managed to replace it, came back feeling triumphant. And my other half said, "Yeah, I think I'm going to leave you because you've just been a workaholic." And it's like, well, hold on. I've been doing it for good reason. And our son was getting diagnosed with autism. And my response to all of this is where the coming to the senses bit comes from, was to listen to more of the traditional personal development, the sort of Tony Robbins school of get up and grind, set ambitious goals, chuck lots of energy into it. So I just doubled down, Jules. I was like, right, I'm going to hire a personal trainer. I'm going to go plant-based. I'm going to set even bigger goals. I'm going to come out swinging. I'm going to save my relationship, which I did. So there you go. But all of that compounded and built up to me getting functional neurological disorder. At that point, I had to take a break. And that's when I I paid to spend 3 days with the wonderful Michael Neal, which is, I think he was one of your guests recently, wasn't he, on this brilliant podcast. So, and he taught me to slow down to the speed of life, and told me that, look, Marcus, humans at university do better when they have less on their mind. And I hadn't really heard that before in that way. Like for me, it was all about set goals, like chuck everything at it, go all in, build businesses, make money. And actually, that's great when you're in your 20s, but I was sort of in my mid 30s at that point, and my body just conked out essentially. And it was pretty scary for a few months. And I ended up getting my feeling back in my arms and legs, and that was kind of cool. And ended up doing a bit of marketing for Michael, which was kind of cool as well. So you might think, Jules, that's the end of the story, right? It's like, oh, and but that'd make a pretty crap podcast, and it wouldn't be very accurate at all. So I think you do know this about me, what happened to me afterwards. So I had this.
I'm not sure that I do,
Oh,
actually.
this is good. So I had it sussed. I've been sort of coached by Michael Neal. I came back, and the business was doing well. And 2019 was one of the best years of my life. Rebecca and I were doing well. We bought and built our dream house. I was like, oh, this is amazing. I'd really, got that work-life balance thing. I'd let go of the Tony Robbins, have ambitious goals and all the rest of it. I still had goals, but it came from a place of, I kind of want this rather than I have to have it. I do it. That the energy you bring to it it really makes a difference. And then of course 2020 happened. March 2020, the economic sky falls in, as we know, because the pandemic hit, and we had clients ringing up, and I just saying, well, we want to stop all marketing. This is terrifying. What do we do? And we lost £95,000 a month of client retainers in a week. And around this time, I started getting a bit of a sore throat and a little bit of a cough. But of course, I was at this point, like everything I'd learned about listening to your body, slowing down to the speed of life, well, that all goes out the window, because in my mind, this is World War III, right? I have to save my business. I was worried I was going to have to lay off 20 people. So I went back into what I called startup mode. So I was all in, and, we did some good stuff. I remember calling my friend who's quite senior at Barclays and said, look, I want to put on a webinar called Digital Marketing When Demand Drops. And he got 100, it was actually about 1,000 like Barclays business customers on it. And I was practicing, and because I wanted to just establish ourselves as thought leaders to help reassure our clients. I thought I could stand up and lead. I thought it was a great thing to do. And I remember on the day of the webinar, Jules, I had a dreadful fever. Like my little cough had become a lot worse, and I was like, well, and I think Rebecca said, maybe you should cancel it. You should listen to your body. I was like, my body will fucking listen to me, right? And so I'd completely gone back to right, this is it. Dunkirk spirit. I can handle this. This is World War III. That's also a horrible thing to say, because actually, what my grandfather and what people went through in the war was actually serious problems. Mine was just, Marcus wants to try and save his little business. But anyway, that's how it felt like internally for me. After, no word of a lie, after I gave that webinar, and I was really nervous because I was coughing so much beforehand. But when the adrenaline takes you through something, so I just gave this presentation, and I was really proud of it, and it's recorded. And that was the last time I was normal, because after that I fell off my chair. Literally, I fell off. I felt really dizzy. I crawled into bed, and I was really sick with COVID for about 5 weeks. They had to call the paramedics out twice. They didn't take me because they said I was still young, but said to call back if my lips were turning blue, because everyone was calling. Like they said, well, older people, you don't need a ventilator. So I had to have those, what they called, oxygen saturation little finger devices that would tell me if my oxygen sats were getting too low. And it was terrifying. And then I never got better. So 5 weeks went by, and I thought, well, I must be over the virus now, but I can't get out of bed. I've got pounding headaches, dizziness, nausea. I mean, I'd given up drinking, but it was like, the only thing I could describe it as, it's like if you had a hangover or you drunk like a lot of vodka on an empty stomach. I sound like I've got a problem. I don't, by the way, but my younger days when I was a child, Jules, it just felt like a hangover from hell. I couldn't get out of bed. And after a few months, I kept going back to the GP, and they're like, you have post-viral fatigue. There's a lot more than that. I was getting lots of weird symptoms. My functional neurological disorder came back. My heart rate, there were times my heart rate would go up to almost 180, and I'd be sitting still.
Jeepers.
And I was like, what
Right.
is going on? It's like all these weird symptoms. And then the more I spoke to the GP and the more I spoke to people at the doctor's surgery, they're like, we're seeing a lot of this. There's some patients that get what we think is COVID. And because we didn't have testing back then, this is still April, May 2020. They're like, but it seems to be ongoing. And then in August 2020, they announced that there is a new disease called long COVID. And I remember this guy going, I don't want a new fucking disease. I don't want any disease, let alone a new one. Like we don't know anything about it. So they couldn't tell me if I was ever going to get better. They couldn't tell me anything that was going to happen. And you, honestly, Jules, it's such a weird thing because every month new weird symptoms would just occur. I think why I couldn't get to sleep. I'd sort of like just keep shaking in the night, and it was just all, and they would come and go, and there's nothing I could really do. And then I thought, right, have you ever seen the film The Martian with Matt Damon? Have you ever seen that film?
I have, long time ago, but yes.
So you know when he's like, he then gets over the despair of being left on Mars, and he realizes he's going to run out of food in like 2 months, and then he basically gets over that, and then says, right, I'm going to have to start growing plants on Mars. I'm going to have to science the shit out of this. So I was like, right, I'm going to science the shit. So Michael Neal, all the stuff I'd learned on personal development and well-being, that got, again, that didn't even come into my thinking. This was a science problem. This is a medical problem. So I ended up just chucking money at it. I hired an occupational therapist, private doctors, did DNA tests, blood tests, nutrition, everything. And they just said, look, we don't know what's wrong with you, Marcus, but let's literally measure everything and just rebuild you from the bottom up. It was only after a year of that, and I was slowly getting better, that one of the doctors said to me, they're like, Marcus, like you're doing really, really well, and you are improving slowly, but we're not addressing the elephant in the room. So what's that? She said, your mental health. I was like, my mental health's fine, I'm pushing. She goes, no, but you're really sped up, you're really stressed. I can feel the tension of you wanting to win this. And I think it's actually causing problems. And all of a sudden, and like, I felt like I got like smacked in the face with, well, of course, and I know this because I'd worked with Michael, I've been reading
Yeah.
his. So then and it was around the time Joe Bailey, who's a practitioner similar to Michael, similar to you, released a book called Thriving in the Eye of the Hurricane. And he talked about, there's a woman in it who was called Hannah, and she was a coach for people with chronic conditions. Hannah Studley, I don't know if you've come across her. So I reached out to her and said, look, I'm a bit embarrassed. I've worked with Michael Neal. I've sort of, looked into this way of being the sort of, they call it the three principles, or just, just letting go of shitty thinking and being present, or whatever you want to call it, right? Inside out thinking. She'd had her back broken 3 times, and she got over back pain using this sort of approach. So I started working with her, and I came back to this sort of understanding, and that was what I needed to get out. Like one of the things she said to me, because I'd ring her up, and people who have chronic conditions have this problem where they, as soon as they wake up, their brain starts going, what are all the things that I could feel today? I'm going to feel sick, I'm going to feel da, and you start getting anxious from it. I hadn't driven for about a year and a half, and I remember saying to her, look, I'm going to try driving into the city today, because I live just outside of Norwich, and I'm really scared, and I'm ill. And she goes, Marcus, what if you didn't put anything on it? I said, Hannah, I'm English. You need to, that's an Americanism. I don't know what that means. Put something on. What are you talking about? And she goes, what if like all that was going on for you was just how you felt rather than what you think about what might happen? So what do you mean? She's like, well, what's going on for you right now? Like physically? I was like, I got a little bit of a headache. She goes, that it? I was like, yeah. She goes, okay. So what if you didn't have, I've got a headache and I'm worried about getting really dizzy and really sick, and I'm worried about crashing the car on the motorway, and why is this happening to me? And I'm so fucking miserable. What if all that just wasn't there? And I was like, well, then I'll just go and drive the car. And she goes, cool, go do that. And when I got in the car the night before, again, another cultural reference, the film Reservoir Dogs?
Oh, yeah, one of my favourite films.
Yeah, banging soundtrack, right? Like key million 1970s, like, and it was a sunny day, and I was like, I'm going to put on that Reservoir Dogs soundtrack. It's down, down, now, 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 now. And I put my glasses on. It was sunny, and I just literally drove into the city, and I was so, I had the looking for some happiness. I had cranked up the. I'm terrible singer, by the way, which obviously didn't need to point that out because everyone just heard it. But and I remember pulling up at the car park, going, oh, cool. I was like, oh shit, I'm supposed to have this chronic condition and be sick. And I was like, I still have a bit of a headache. And that was the key out. I was like, oh, I don't need a thought stack. So this whole thing of coming to my senses, I was like, shit, there really is just a present moment. And I can leave it and go, oh my God, what I'm feeling right now, and catastrophize and go, it could be this. And that's fine. Like the catastrophization bless it, that part of my brain looks after me. Like, it's good to jump to worst case, so you make sure you avoid that. But to live in worst case scenario, shit, I've really built that in as a habit. So that was kind of that was the key. I just had to just remember, and to this day, I still occasionally get a little bit of the long COVID symptoms. They're not, it's 99% gone. I'm living a really full and wonderful life now. But when I do, I just smile and go, cool, right now, what's for dinner? Like, let's just, I don't put anything on it. And then I realize that can be used in all areas of our lives, right? So
Yeah, there's so many wonderful things in what you've said there, Marcus, that I could pull out from, and I'm really grateful for you sharing it. Because as I said to you beforehand, I don't think I think that goal setting and the way that it's structured within personal development can be helpful, and it's a great big all caps. And I think that what can happen is, and you, I, many others have got caught up in this, is it's the driver behind it. Because that's, if I've got a desperation behind the goal of I have to get it because if not, then I'm going to look like a failure, or if not, then no one will love me, or it doesn't matter what it is. And the challenge is that many of us aren't even aware of that thinking being there, and that's the thinking that's in charge. And often I'll say to clients, it's like, imagine getting into one of these driverless cars, and you don't have no choice about the destination or the speed or the way the car is driven, and it goes based on your background thinking. Yeah, wide-eyed, oh my God, what would that be like? Because it would just be a full-on taking me, 100 miles an hour because I have to get there, and da-da-da. And it's, well, let's take a step back. It's not about not looking for the goal. It's not about, oh, well, therefore I shouldn't set goals, or I shouldn't look to have a dream or an ambition or something like. It's not about that. It's about what's the energy behind it. And if it's coming from a place of desperation, then it stinks. You may still get the thing, but it's gonna stink. And that stink is what really ends up creating the fumes of our life if we're not careful. And I think that then that's where we can end up. And I love the way that you articulated it when, your partner's going, I think you should listen to your body. Fuck my body. It's going to do what I tell it to do, which is I'm doing this webinar because I've got to save my business. I've got to save all these people's livelihoods. And I think that was so prevalent in 2020, because I think it sideswiped most people as to what went on, rather than just taking a deep breath and taking a step back for a moment. It doesn't have to be for a month, and going, what's going to be the best, most helpful, of service approach I can take to this situation? How can I help our business by helping others? Which may well still have been doing the webinar, but at a different time. But the arrogance that our thinking has of, no, I have to do it now and my way on my terms. I just don't care what the body is going through. And it's really interesting that you've had two major situations of where your body's gone, no thanks, time out, done. And you've had no choice but to listen to it. And that it's so common, unfortunately, that very often that's what happens. People get a physical swipe that makes them stop and go, shit, I really need to take stock here. And often when people get far enough away from the pain, they end up repeating patterns. But I think that what's different, how I hear it, is that because of the approaches that you took, you're still kind of peeling back the layers and going, oh, hang on a second, there's that pattern, but it's showing up in a slightly different way, but it's still got the same stink around it. Okay, so I may be living differently, but there's some nuances here that I could learn. And it sounds to me that you've reached out to different coaches and support in various different ways to get the next bit of learning that you need, which I think is so amazing, rather than just going, oh shit, well, I'm healthy now, physically healthy now, so I better crack on. But actually keep taking stock. And every conversation that you and I have had since we've met is about, how I hear you describing is going, oh, okay, well, this is what's going on right now. let me take stock with the information that I've learned. Can I apply any of that? Or is there some other kind of nuance that I need to add in there? And I think what would be so wonderful to hear, because as a businessman, as an entrepreneur, as somebody who is a family man who has the responsibility for other people's salaries and is looking to live in a different way, what I'd love to hear is, how do you bring yourself back when the external world may be pulling you in different directions and there may be other demands? How do you bring yourself back to that point of going, hang on a second, I need to listen to what this body is telling me. I need to listen to my intuition and go with what is, rather than what the thinking is catastrophizing about.
It variably, I think, is the answer, because I'm still not doing it as well as I would like. But you're right. I mean, just conversations with incredible coaches like yourself just always bring me back home. Do you know what I mean? And I think the truth is, I'm scared. I'm scared that it's not true that So there's a friend of mine is a nervous system reset coach, and she said to me, and it really stuck with me, that Marcus, there's two ways to make money, and you're already good at one of them, which is what she called anxious money. I was like, huh? So what's anxious money? And it's like literally like I call it the Tony Robbins approach. People don't know who Tony Robbins is, but it's just very much striving, pushing, like, and just chucking lots of energy at it. Just keep going, keep grinding, get up and grind, never give up. And that does
I think
work,
I
right?
think sorry to interrupt you. I think that,
Yeah.
and I totally get why you're using the reference of Tony Robbins. I actually think it's very prominent in just corporate living. Is
Mm,
very much push, strive, type A, must achieve,
yeah.
push, push, push. So I think it's across the board.
And it works, right? Like it's got me to where I am. But the thing that she pointed out, which is very fair, is that it comes with collateral damage. Whereas the other way to make money is what she called peace money. And I want to believe in peace money. There's a little part of me that goes, yeah, bullshit, man. Like you've got to grind, you've got to hustle, like, because on a very base level, the more activity I do, right? Let's take sales for example. Like, let's take your amazing business. Like, you're probably full up, so you don't need to do lots of things. But say you weren't, I'd be saying, Jules, like, you need to have like 50 to 100 conversations a month. Get out there, have conversations, do stuff. The more people you speak to, the higher the probability of success. But then, if I really look back at my most successful moments, it wasn't linear like that, right? It was sort of this thing of like, I mean, I did put myself out there, but there are leverage points, right? You meet one person who then introduces you to 50 new clients, right? So why don't I find one of those rather than to speak to everybody? So there is something there about. So that's what I'm playing for the minute. It's this idea of making peace money, or actually that piece is a bit too slow for me. I'm quite animated, right? On a disc profile, I'm a yellow and I'm an extrovert, etc. So I like I've got a new one, which is play money, right? Like, if I can play, because I think what we're looking for is, and you point out beautifully, is a sustainable energy. It's one that I can do for the rest of my life, you know? And you see people that are in a vocation that is their calling. They're not counting down the days till they retire at 65 or something. They'll just do it because they just love adding value and love helping people. But it comes from a natural passion, and that energy is just, it's always there. I love Taoism with yin and yang, and there's a concept in Taoism you're probably familiar with called Wu Wei, which means non-striving, effortless action, non-forcing. And you still have the yang in Taoism, which is it's called the masculine energy, the pushing. But I remember chatting to a Taoist who said, yeah, but if you actually study the ancient text, what they are pointing to is that you need to be in yin, the black, the feminine, the peace energy, 95% of the time. That's where you rest. That's where, and then of course, like, if there's a fire say we're both in the same room, we're clearly not, but say we were and the building's on fire, well, we both need to get into that yang energy to run out, right? That's fine. But that's what it's for. We're only supposed to be in fight or flight. There's a book called Why Zebras Don't Get Stress Ulcers. It's written in the 90s, and it talks about why animals don't get stressed in the way humans do. And it talks about the fact that we've got this prefrontal cortex that can imagine things. So every time I imagine something happening, I get into fight or flight. if you give an example, in the animal kingdom, you've got a gazelle gets chased by a lion and it escapes. And then 10 minutes later, the gazelle's just grazing, Whereas me or you get chased by a lion, I'm telling everyone about it, I'm reliving it. And every time I relive it, I go into fight or flight. But according to this book, it looks at our closest cousins, chimpanzees, and says, well, these guys, they're supposed to be in fight or flight once every 2 or 3 days. Yet we're in this hyper-stimulated world. We're in fight or flight all the time. And then we got the stories, that cause that desperation and that smell of like, I must do this and I must do that. And it's like, it's a real challenge. So I think how I deal with it is I surround myself with brilliant people that bring me home. I play the game of just catching myself, right? It's that every day it's just catching myself. And then just having micro breaks of just being present. Like I've never said this publicly, but why not? It's a ridiculous thing I do. I'm a big Taylor Swift fan. No one would have guessed. I went to see her at Wembley on Friday. No, second time I've seen Taylor in a month.
We'll forgive you.
Well, I had a spare ticket. I was going to call you anyway, Jules, so it's fine. But no, I really like Taylor Swift because her last like 3 or 4 albums have been really slow and much more like less poppy and annoying. And actually 2 of them dropped when I was really sick with long COVID, so they got me through them. So there's an emotional thing. But I do a thing which I call triple tea, where I have a cup of green tea, I put on Taylor Swift, and I pick up a book on Taoism, but that also extends to 3 principles or anything that really slows me down. And I'm out in countryside Norfolk, so I'm very blessed. I look out over a beautiful field and forest, and just that sort of nature bathing or forest bathing rather, and just like being in nature, listening to beautiful soft music, incredible lyrics from my favorite singer/poet, reading something like the Tao Te Ching, and having a nice warm cup of green tea. That for me is me 10 out of 10. Just being in my home with the family and just settled. And it's so funny. Like I can strive to make all the money in the world, yet I'm happiest when I'm there with my other half and son playing in the background, the cat walking past. And that I'm really present at that point. I'm connected. And strange enough, from there, that's when I get my biggest insights and ideas. And then I pace up and down and think, we could do this with the business or that. But it comes from that sustainable play money energy rather than anxious money. And for me, that's been such a big distinction of just checking in and going, shit, what energy am I in? Yeah, I'm in that stinky, anxious, angry, strivey energy. I can't wave a wand, get rid of it, but just acknowledging it, seeing it, and seeing that might be useful to push through if I need to push through, right? Like I'm not saying you can be zen and playful all the time. If there's a deadline, there's a deadline, right? But yeah, like just catching myself is that's how I'm doing it. And I'm still failing, Jules. Like the business has struggled for the last few months. I've gone in and worked longer hours, but I think the reason I haven't burnt out yet, and this year I haven't actually been sick once at all. I haven't picked up any viruses and so on. I think I have been taking those micro breaks. I took 5 days to hang out at that event with you and just sit in a really beautiful place and hear, like, your poem was stunning, by the way, on that. I've still, got that. I want to shout out your amazing poem that you should share with your followers. But it was gorgeous.
I don't think I've shared that on the podcast. I haven't even got it here, so I can't share it.
No, but one day you should. But yeah, so that's anyway, really long way of answering your question, but that's kind of what I'm playing with at the minute. I'm failing miserably, but catching myself and trying again and getting back up on the horse. And each time I'm being on there a bit longer before I fall off. So that's what's going on.
But the thing that I love there is about when someone offers a different way of looking at something, and I don't think it's a right or wrong way of looking at something. It's just, have you realised that we could label it as 2 ways of earning money. We can earn anxious money, or we can earn peaceful money. And I was sort of, I don't know if I was visually chuckling, but I certainly internally was chuckling, because I'm like, oh my God, there's a parallel there. Because I think that I grew up on a council estate, and we didn't have a lot of money. There was numerous times where we struggled. Dad was made redundant numerous times. Mum had 3 jobs at one point. So it wasn't an easy upbringing. They did their utmost to make sure that we had what we needed, but the luxuries weren't there. And I totally get that. So I think that I was very much instilled with that you have to work hard in order to be able to get. And so that's very much been something that for 2 decades of running this business is that it, to me, it's just been like, yeah, work. I forget to take holidays. I'm very good at switching off. I'm not somebody who I go home and I'm on my laptop the whole time, or I'm on my phone or any other device the whole time. I'm very good at forgetting where that is actually. So I think that might be an age thing. But I think so. I'm not working in that way, but I do forget to take the. I have over the up until probably about 18 months ago, not really taken great holidays to be able to have that restful time, and it's because I think our culture, and I don't mean even just British culture. I think it's I don't even think it's Western culture anymore. I think it's far more global. Of in order to be successful in quotation marks, or in order to have whatever you have, you can only get that through striving hard. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that the other way of doing it is sitting back and doing nothing and crossing your legs and just visualizing and it's going to fall in your lap, but it goes back to what we were saying about that the energy behind it. What is the energy behind it? Because if it's, if I go to a supermarket hungry, I'm going to choose shit food to go in that trolley. But if I go to that supermarket and I'm satiated in whatever way, shape, or form from a nutritional perspective, I'm going to make very different choices. And I think that that's what, when we're taking those green tea, Taylor Swift, forest bathing, Taoist moments, however they show up for us. And I think it's so important to. One of the reasons I started this podcast was because I wanted to have conversations with different people rather than me just saying, well, this is what I do, and people mimicking that. It's like, well, let's hear from other people who have different ways of being able to do it, so that if Taylor Swift is your thing and you can go and just chill out with Taylor, then flipping go for it, you weirdo. Um, but if it's something else, I've got friends who they would much rather be by the sea, whereas I would much rather be by a mountain and forest than by the sea. It's not that I don't like the sea, but that's what does it more for me, is that sort of environment. And I think it's finding the things that enable us to come from a more aligned, balanced, and it's interesting, this word's come to mind, powerful or powered up actually place, rather than that fearful, desperate place. Because I think it does our bodies great. It's really great for our thinking. We get inspiration. We're creative. We connect in different ways. We connect with people. I had a whole plan yesterday. Initially, I was meant to be meeting up with some friends, but for various reasons, they cancelled. And then I was like, right, well, I'll take the dog for a big long walk, and then I'm going to hit the gym, and I'm just going to go. I'm not going to push it, but I'm just going to go and enjoy it. And I got back from the dog walk and I sat on the sofa and had a drink and just went, I don't want to do anything today. And I suddenly reflected on the last few months where I've had this, and this needs to be done, get that done, and now do this bit, now do that bit, now. And I unashamedly spent all day on the sofa, literally watching different stuff, reading, sitting and looking out the window. The dog had a couple of big long walks. But other than that, that was it. And I was thinking about it this morning and thought, I genuinely can't remember the last time I did that without having the excuse of being ill. And I kept checking in during the day and going, okay, am I avoiding anything here? Or is this actually what the body needs? Is this what is required? And it was like, no, this is really what I need right now. Had a little snooze. And I think that that's what's important, is because then we're coming from a place of being more in alignment. And to me, that's when I hear the word peaceful money, is that's where it is. It's more, that's why you've used the word playful. It's, to me, it's you're in alignment. You're either anxious money or aligned money. Because when you're in alignment, I genuinely don't know where clients show up from. I really don't. I get inquiries that come in and I'm like, how did you find me? I don't know. I think it was a web search. I'm like, well, I know my search engine optimization is not absolutely the top notch. So I'm really quite surprised at that. So I think that for me, the more I can be in alignment, the more I can take the action. I did some training in India years ago, a couple of times, and they have a triangle. They don't have a name for this triangle, but they have on one side of it intent, which is your purpose, the why, why you're doing something, what's behind it, what's the energy that's behind it. The other side is action, and what are the actions, what are the practical steps. And I think that we very much in the Western world get caught up on that action side of it without thinking about the intent. But even if we do those, we forget the third part of that triangle, which is grace, which is faith, which is the energy of life, which is the pace of life. It's the what's right and appropriate right now. And I think that, to me, when we have those aligned, that's when playful money appears. That's when peaceful money appears. That's when that aligned money, those great clients turn up, those opportunities. Yeah, that's my rambling.
No, it's stunning. It reminds me of one of my favorite quotes. There's a difference between humans and machines. Is humans start when you press stop. I absolutely love that. So I'm quite curious, Jules. Yesterday when you had your sofa day, did you have any nice insights? And it's fine if not, but I always find that when I literally stop, I just let go, then something just crawls into my head. I'm like, oh, that's a cool idea. I should do that. But I don't know if that happened to you yesterday.
No, it wasn't about that, actually. I think the insight more for me was the realization of that this is what was needed and it's okay. And to pick up on the I can't remember who it was that said to you about what if you didn't put anything on it when you had the headache and you were going to drive in, is that there was nothing on it. So the way that I perceive things is that we have whatever's going on right now, but then stacked on top of that is a heap of thinking, stories, expectations, past recurrences, all of that stuff. And when you, how I heard what you were saying is when you just simply acknowledge the sensation of a headache was there, and the desire, as I heard it, was to drive into the city, and that's it. That's it. And it was the same as yesterday. I got back from the first dog walk and just went, oh, I'm going to sit and have a cup of tea, and I'm actually just going to catch up on this thing that I wanted to watch. And I finished both of those and just went, okay, what next? It was like, nothing, just stay here. This is actually what's required. And I genuinely don't remember the last time, if it's ever happened, as my spare room at the moment is currently a tip because I've just dumped loads of stuff in there that I wanted to get sorted. And I do need to sort it out because I've got a friend staying next week. But actually, I didn't have any of what would have been there in the past of spare room needs doing. Why are you not doing this? You should be going and doing that. How dare you? This is really lazy. I didn't have any of that thinking. And I think part of that was because I wasn't making it right or wrong. It was just, is this what's needed right now? Yes. Okay.
I love that. And just being really like that expression, slowing down to the speed of life and just being present and going, okay, what next? What next? And those are always the nicest days, I find. Like when you're on holiday, you lose track of time. And the only thing you need to worry about is when do I need to eat? What am I going to eat? And also, you can't live like that every single day, but those days are
Why not?
recharging.
Why not?
I don't know.
Why not? Why can't we live like that? Why can't we have the holiday way of thinking every day? That's a question I actually had with a client last week, because she's just come back from a holiday and she's like, oh, I'm losing it already. And I was like, well, why can't we bring that with us? Because as you say, when we're on holiday, it's because we are, well, what do we want to do next? It becomes more in the moment with logistics, because we still need to eat, or we still need to go to the bathroom, or so if we're running a business, then there's the logistical stuff that still needs to be done. It's not about, and I think that's why when we're talking about Taoism or Zen or anything else like that, I think that's where the confusion comes in, because I think that in the world that we live, we think that to go and live that way, we have to give up all these other things. It's like, well, yeah, if you want to go and be a monk, absolutely, go for it. But I think that bringing it into our everyday, so how can I do that? How can I have the holiday mindset right now, even sat in this chair when it's getting cold and it's not as sunny as I would like it to be?
We should come a bit further south.
I lived there for many years in my life. Not on your part, further round.
Yeah, that's fine. The other thing that I've observed about holidays is because often you're in a brand new place. You're brought to the present moment so much more. You're walking around a city, being in a foreign country, and there's different smells and sounds and tastes and everything. And it's so new and rich to the senses. You can't help but spend more time just being present with what's happening right now than in your head thinking, right, okay, I've got to put a wash on later, got to do this, got to go to the shop. Yeah, all that sort of stuff you get when you're in that routine. Now, the routine's great for efficiency and blah, blah, blah. But, you know, how often do we just drift off because we're in our usual house and our usual. And at one point when we first moved into the house, it was a novelty. And at one point when I first bought my car that I love, and it's just remembering, oh my God, this is so amazing to just be alive and just to be present and go, wow, look, I've got a MacBook Pro, I've got an iPhone, I've got all these things that are really amazing. And just realizing it's very cool to just be alive and present. And I think that's what holiday does for you. It just brings you into the moment. But we can do that, and that micro sort of being present, and not in a I have to do my mindfulness 10 minutes sort of way. Like, I ruined mindfulness for myself, Jules. Like, I had a
Do
competition with
that.
my mum on Headspace. As like, we had to, like, who could have the longest number of streaks. Honestly, I remember, like, literally going to bed at like 11, and then, like, you drift off. Oh God, shit! So it was like 11:30. I haven't meditated today. Like jumping out of bed. Rex like, what are you doing? I was like, I need to meditate. Fucking meditate. I'm going to lose my streak. So I'm sitting there going, oh God, there's only 8 minutes left. I'm just going to go up to midnight. Okay, right. Yes, cool. Streak. I did 182 days, and I was like, and I was like, so like, I can't break my streak. I was so anxious about it. I was like, I think this has become bigger than what the Headspace app was trying to get me to do. And then actually I realized, like, I find closing my eyes and meditating boring, but I find being present and going for a walk in the woods amazing. So I'm just going to do that, or just little moments of going, cool, look around me, isn't this awesome? Like, it's a gift. It's so amazing.
It's interesting though, because what I'm hearing you say of what you've done I don't know if you've done it consciously or not actually, is those moments of the green tea and the Taylor Swift and the trees, is that is connecting with your senses, because you've got the smell and the taste of the tea, you've got the auditory of Taylor, you've then got the sight of the trees, and potentially with whatever air if you're outside the fields. So actually you're coming to your senses by doing those things. And I think that's one of the reasons that I loved when the phrase came to me, is that is what goes on, because sometimes it is those wake up moments of being really ill or losing loads of money or someone dying, or it is those kinds of wake up calls. But it is those moments of going, I've got a friend who's a chocolatier, and one of the first times I went to one of her workshops, it was hilarious because there was like 20 or 30 women, and she comes around and she's sharing different chocolates with us, and it is just literally a square. And the moment she puts it on the plate for everybody, you can see the amount of people that would just immediately go to collect and put it straight in, and she has to go, don't touch it, don't do anything with it. And she teaches how to understand chocolate by smelling it. And this is all coming to your senses. You smell it first and foremost. You look at how the colour of it. Then you snap it so that you can actually hear the quality of it, because it's got different sensation before you even take it in. And yet what most of us do, and I think that's the difference to me when you were talking about holiday, there's different sensations, there's different smells, there's different sights, there's different sounds, all of that's what's going on. And yet on a day to day, we just go, oh, well, there's the street entertainer around the corner making all the noise, or there's oh God, there's that hubbub there, or there's that, who's done that, or we forget that actually, even just by pausing, it doesn't have to take 30 minutes, 10 minutes to just go, what can I feel on my skin right now? What can I smell right now? What can I taste right now?
Yeah. And that's a fun thing to play with, because it's where we just numb ourselves because we're so in our head and so full of cortisol and adrenaline and sped up. We're just speeding through life like it's this sort of, what is an endless to-do list. There's that great quote which annoys people, but I love it, from Dr. Richard Carlson, and what's it? Don't sweat the small stuff. He's like, one day you will die and your inbox won't be empty. someone else will have to empty it for you. But no, I have to empty my inbox every day. But it's that thing of like, you know, one day I'm going to die and my house is still going to be messy, and you know, like your spare room might still be. I hope it's sorted by then, Jules. But you know, like, you know what I mean. And I think
so do I, because I'm really hoping I don't die before next week.
Okay, but you know what I mean, right? There'll be another spare room in your
Right.
Manor Castle, in the west wing of your house. But no, I'm loving this. Like, what I'm getting from this conversation has been so fun. I hope other people find it useful as well. Is like, in addition to the play money and, you know, yeah, the play money, the sort of being present, all the rest of it, is just this sort of, let's play with the senses. Let's keep coming back to the moment and just enjoy that. And I mean, I'm going to have some lunch in a minute. I'm just going to slow down and enjoy that and just like tap into that, because it's funny, the dual meaning of coming to your senses. Obviously, when you first said it to me, you talk about the podcast, it's like, well, coming to my senses mentally of like, yes, I've had an enlightenment. I've had a moment where like, God, I've woken up from being really stupid. But that also applies to just daydreaming my way through life rather than actually living in the present moment and slowing down to the speed of life and just actually enjoying the richness that's right in front of me. And, you know, going back to my friend and not yours, Taylor Swift, you know, at Wembley on Friday night, I really was present, and I was just literally like squeezing every bit of that. Like, most people had their phones up. I was like, no, I'm not filming much. I'm just going to really enjoy this 92,000 people all singing together and just the energy of that. And it just was remarkable. So yeah, I think life's just a series of present moments, and all that exists is this one. So if we can just squeeze that rather than leave the present moment and go off into our heads, things are going to be a bit better, I think. And we can play with, like, I love the idea of, as well, could every day be a holiday energy? Why not? Let's play with that too. At the very least, we're not going to feel in fight or flight and burn out as easily. So why not? It's gorgeous, Jules. Thank you.
Well, thank you. And you know, normally I end with a question about what would you offer as advice or whatever, but you've just wrapped it up so beautifully there with captivating all those different things. And I love one of the reasons why I really wanted to have you on the podcast, Marcus, is because I think that you're so open about the experiences that you've been through, and that you're very, to me at least anyway, you're very open to I'm a work in progress, and I'm not talking from a place of that I've got this right, because I'm still not. And I think that's important, because I think that, again, the way that the thinking transpires things, if I've read the book or I've been on the course, therefore I've sorted, or I've been and had one coaching session or had that mentor, then it's all sorted. It's like, no, it's like the never ending list. This is a process. This is about evolution, and the more that we can consciously choose to come to our senses in as many moments as we can, then that's going to help us evolve. So thank you so much for joining me on today's podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I look forward to catching up with you again very soon.